you ready for this?
Gonna be fun.
You will not stand in my way.
Frostborn, hunger. This pleases me.
I do not fear you, mortal.
Your soul shall be mine.
Don't make me laugh.
Needs a brew? Oh, I do. Feel a shredding, baby. Let the battle begin.
We're here for the 31st episode of Trolling HGC. HGC has started. We are going to cover week 1 today. I'm joined by recurring guest Trent Esports. And I would like to thank you all for tuning into Trolling HGC, a Heroes of the Storm podcast focused on esports, a member of the Trolls.gg Entertainment Network. I'm hosting today. I'm Bahgz. I know we're missing a lot of our assets. It's because LiQuid's not here because he is smitten with some flu outbreak that's sweeping the country, unfortunately. I know Bacon was down for the count last week. There's been several people, at least at my job, down for the count. And, well, here's to wishing for the best to you, man. We miss you. I am struggling without you. You are the MVP of this this entertainment network. But I've got Trent to help me out and get through this. And Trent, thank you for joining me, man. How's it going?
Dude, I'm doing awesome. We've got an amazing week of games from last week to talk about and a ton of ridiculous games to preview for next week. We're going to manage to fill the time somehow.
All right, great. That's what we're going to make it work. You know what it was? It was a great game. It was a great week 1 of games. So it's going to be easy to let the discussion flow, so to speak. But before we do that, I want to do some housekeeping. Guys, we have a Patreon to support the Trolls.gg network. It's all this entire, I don't want to call it a company because we're not an LLC, but this entire entertainment network, this fledgling entertainment network, is supported by you, the fans, you, the patrons. And I want to give a big thank you to our newest patron, Matt R. Your generous patronage brings us one step closer to our next Trolls.gg rewards here and helps us continue to bring you guys fantastic Heroes content. Now, I have big plans that I am spearheading the task force to update our patron page. We're going to have a bunch of new rewards coming up, specific goals for just patrons, goals for the entire Trolls.gg community that can be unlocked. It's going to be a lot of stuff. I don't want to spoil anything, but do keep a lookout on the docket for that. We are going to have some fantastic content that we'll be able to offer you once we hit those goals. As well, I would like to shine a light on some of the reviews we've been getting on iTunes, which we haven't done yet. So, first off, a big thank you to Matt SEO for the 5-star review. He says, awesome podcast. If you want a weekly roundup of all hot esports news, this is the podcast for you. As well, JenBrain88 shot us a review over on iTunes. Amazing esports coverage, 5 stars. No show covers HGC better than this podcast. If you like the pro scene or even the amateur hot scene, this is the show to watch. Guys, thank yous for those reviews. You have no idea how much those help as far as SEO on podcast sources. That's great for us. It helps us reach out to more fans. As well, I left the Troll of the Week blank, so it would be a big surprise. This week's Troll of the Week is LiQuiud, none other than himself. I want to give the guy a big shout out. I know he's feeling down in the dumps right now. He's hurting. He's got a massive migraine. He's been throwing up. He's not doing well. I want to give the guy a big shout out because he is the heart and soul of the Trolls.gg Entertainment Network. He was the guy who spearheaded getting people to write articles for the website. He is the guy who started this particular podcast and reached out to me to do it. He is the guy who has he is, as Daz recently said, the dictator of Trolls.gg. And the brains and heart and soul of this operation, and no one puts in more work than he does. So again, buddy, feel better, and thank you for all the work you put into this. Now, if I had a bumper right now, I'd press the news bumper and we'd switch over to the news. But since I don't, we're gonna make the really rigid, sharp turn into the news section. Yeah. Listen, guys. Live bumpers the whole night. That's it. We're just going to improvise, and it's going to be fun that way, and I'm okay with that. So, all right. Heroes of the Dorm is back. That was announced on Monday, I believe. on the Twitter page. I have a link in the show notes to the Dorm webpage. Good news, everyone. It's going to be streamed on Twitch and MLG this year. So no Facebook Live. That's great. That's actually like, that's literally like, I don't know how much Facebook paid for Heroes of the Dorm, but the fact that it's not going to be on there, it will probably at least triple the viewership, if not more. Like, seriously. Well, I don't think they hit over 10,000 for like the Dorm
Facebook
finals.
Live thing is so fascinating. It like their decision making has been very odd because now they're putting a bunch of money into Paladins, which has been streamed exclusively in their pro scene on Facebook to like 1,000 people a week, as opposed to like normal esports numbers. And yeah, it's just not working. So I'm very glad that Heroes has made a better decision.
It's like I understand that Facebook's throwing Facebook money at these things to try and like steal some of the viewership from Twitch, but it's obviously not working, and it just hurts your brand when you're not out there. And regardless of the amount of money you're taking, I just don't think it's worth it. There's just too many people at Twitch. There's too many just happenstance viewers you could pick up just by being online on Twitch as people are browsing and going, just passing by. You know what I mean? If you're on Facebook, like you're not going to find me. Like for example, I see Paladins a little higher in the game viewership for one day or something like that. I might click it and see what's going on, and then I might happen across the Paladins League on Twitch. But I'll tell you what, where that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen on Facebook because that's not where I'm going to, stumble across esports, or video games in general. As well, they announced, and I don't have all the details, unfortunately. I only have the press release that they released on their website. But they did announce that there will be regional play to help seed the 64-team tournament leading up. So we can look forward to that. And I believe there is a esports organization, words are hard, on the East Coast that'll be helping out. So let's see. We've also got, in other news, that this literally dropped like the day after we did our show last week. Method picked up Team Expert, the old Team Expert roster. So last week, the day before HGC happened, we had our show with Caldor, and we were calling the team TBD, to be determined, as we knew they were dropped by Expert, even though the Heroes website still listed them as Expert. But picked up by Method, basically like it's an endemic esports org, but it's more than that. It is a Blizzard endemic esports org. It is the guild that made the leap to esports company. So, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. To me, I think it's really cool that we can have within the Blizzard ecosystem, like something that grew out of it to continue that and branch off into other games within the Blizzard ecosystem.
Yeah, it's super interesting. This was not something that I was expecting or had heard any rumors about, so it was definitely a surprise. I think it's a great to jump into Heroes. It's really interesting to see them bringing Heroes as the second game that they're coming into, because they're really mainly just a raiding guild. Like, they're not even super focused. Like, if you look at their website and stuff, they're not super focused on the arena side of WoW even. They really made their name as a raiding guild. So now to jump into competitive esports at the professional level with a team the size and caliber of former Expert, I'm guessing that they're planning to be in here for the long haul.
I would imagine that's the plan. I'm just happy that I'm just glad that they got picked up. It's a really strong-looking roster. It's by, like you said, it's a stable org. It's something that we are familiar with. They made their name in raiding, but they have several really strong WoW Arena teams at this point. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do this year, what they can bring to this scene, and just like the just more professionalism to the hero scene, and less playing ducks and eventic issues that we've been bumping into. All right, with that, I think we can pivot away from the news section and dive into this past week's results, because that's what we're all here for. We want to talk about what happened this past weekend. So I've got the standings here I can pull up. I don't have a scene set up to show you guys, but we can take a quick look over here. Coming out of week 1, we can see in Korea that Ballistics, Tempest, and Blossom are all undefeated coming out of the weekend. And the notable missing name from that is KSV Black. What happened there, man? They got 3-0'd by Tempest. I don't know if you had an opportunity to see those VODs, but that's crazy. Someone was saying that, I forget, they have a friend in one of the countries where sports betting is legal. It was in one of the Discord channels I was in, and they could have bet on this and literally made like thousands and thousands of dollars, because that's how the odds were that stacked that far in favor of Tempest not 3-0ing them. Like, it was just completely blindsided the majority of the Heroes fan base.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, I don't watch Korea normally. I focus on EU and NA just because I also have to watch lots of other stuff, and like Genesis was this weekend. But when I got on Twitter in the morning and saw that Tempest was up 2-0 on KSV, I was like, oh, guess I know what I'm watching right this second, because that's not a thing that anyone would have ever expected to happen. Like, Tempest is a decent team, but KSV, with how dominant they were at Gold Club, I would have expected them to just steamroll anyone but Ballistics.
Sorry about that. I wanted to had to address a couple questions in Twitch chat there. Yeah, it was like, the best example it's like the Jets beating the Patriots. Yeah, I'd say the Jets beating the Patriots. Not quite the Dolphins or the Bills beating the Patriots, but the Jets beating the Patriots. Sports ball, people. It's like a team that's like, it's good but not quite as great as the Patriots. But just like, I don't know, making that monumental upset, especially with how well KSV's been playing. Very surprising. Like, more alarming than if Tempest would have 3-0'd MVP Black last year. It was that dramatic. That being said, moving on over to the EU. Oh, go ahead. If you have some follow-up thoughts, let's hear them.
Oh, no, just like the fact that it was a 3-0 in addition, like a team like Tempest, like if that score was 3-2, you'd be like, oh, okay, good for Tempest. And man, it probably is a pretty cool match. But for them to 3-0 KSV, like, honestly, I'm surprised. Like, there's no way that it actually did happen, but usually when something like that happens, Reddit immediately becomes a flood of like match fixing scandal talk because like you just don't expect it to happen, but they just were not playing up to where they normally can. But we've also seen KSV kind of sleep on stuff in the past, like with the midseason brawl and some times when they haven't necessarily been motivated. So my guess is this weekend we will see them embarrass someone real bad to make up for it, which should be just as entertaining as watching them get up.
They did stomp out their next opponent later in the week. It was one of the weaker teams. It was one of the new teams. I think it was Team Felice, if I'm remembering correctly. They did stomp them out, which is as expected. So I don't know if that was the revenge match or if we'll see it again this weekend when they stomp someone else out. But I completely agree. There'll be some. They'll be upset and they'll be out looking to vent, so to speak. Also, so pivoting over to EU.
Yeah.
For the most part, it kind of went as expected, but there are two teams in particular that are sitting a little prettier than I thought they would be. One team is Team LiQuiD, which Caldor did mention last week on the show that they were looking a lot better, and he expected them to do very well. And the other team is Zealots. Now, they made some big changes, and they weren't very flashy, and they on paper looked a little weaker, but I didn't expect them to be sitting 0-2, and I certainly didn't expect them to lose to Tricked Esport. I was kind of blown away by that.
Yeah, Tricked looked way better than I gave them credit for. Honestly, I think there's a lot to be said for them being the only team that didn't make radical roster changes. Literally all they did was get a better, more veteran support. So in reality, we should have given them a lot more credit in the first week than we necessarily did. I expect them to kind of fall back down to earth, and they kind of did against Dignitas, which we'll find out just how dominant Dignitas is this week. But yeah, they were prioritizing Tyrael way higher than any other team in EU, which also seems to be working pretty well in China right now. They seem to like have kind of their own meta and their own way to play the game that kind of caught Zealots off guard.
I mean, that's kind of, listen, man, hashtag get tricked. That's Alex the Pro G for you, right? Like he you know, it's like, it's their thing, right? So like one day they show up and they're like world beaters and they're doing some things differently. And then the next minute they're get tricking themselves, I guess. I don't know. They're the consistently inconsistent team.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed in Zealots that they got off to the 0-2 start. They lost both to LiQuiuD and Tricked this past weekend. I will say LiQuiuD, you know, they despite struggling in the very first game of the season, they looked really good. Like they looked a lot better, and I think part of that
really is very good.
Exactly. I was going to just say that it's part of, like, when we were talking about the roster moves over the offseason and you were praising Sport Billy. I think that change made a big difference. So I also will say Shad is playing the support role, and it still looks like he is growing into it, and that is me being very fair.
Yeah, I think Zealots is the team that I expect to grow the most this particular season. I think if Diamond Skin survives the Crucible and sticks with this roster, they can become very, very strong because they have a ton of upside in their roster. But for this split in particular, I expect Zealots to struggle a little bit at the beginning as they get used to their new roster and as Shad gets it more comfortable with the support role and starts playing things that aren't Rhaegar. But there's a ton of talent on that team.
It's funny you say that, and I'm going to dive into like the what I noticed with the meta in the different regions a little bit. And I didn't really do a deep dive as I was working on the notes earlier today, but I did have a few takeaways. It's not just Shad. It's not just Shad playing the Rhaegar. That's just EU, man. Like it's kind of crazy. And every region seems to favor a different support, which is kind of cool. You know what I'm looking forward to is Leftovers got off to a rough start, which is kind of expected. But I want to see them play Zealots and Diamond Skin, and I kind of want to see how they stack up against them. They got their first two games, you know, their first two matches of the season were Fnatic, who don't look as strong as they did. They still kind of look like GCW seems Fnatic, and like they're still kind of figuring it out. But still a very solid team, right? And then Team LiQuiuD, which looks a lot stronger than they did last year. So I would like to see Leftovers play like some lower tier teams in EU and see how they fare against them, and if they can pick up some map wins or even some match wins. I guess when they play Diamond Skin, that's going to be kind of like the real litmus test of whether they're just like straight up last place Leftovers, or if they're better than that, you know?
Yeah, I think it's also, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more when we get to Heroes Hearth, but I've talked a number of times before about just how playing against good teams makes you better. And Leftovers spent all last season playing against teams that were categorically worse than them. So they're going to have to take a couple weeks and learn that some of the stuff that they were doing, good teams can actually punish that they weren't getting punished for in the past. So I expect them, like, Lobber's a really smart dude. The whole team is very, very talented, and they get a lot of respect. There were a lot of tweets from pros saying that they looked better than expected. So I do think come week 3, week 4, we'll start seeing them cause some upsets and cause some problems in the rankings. But for the next week or two, it's going to be a little bit rough.
Hopefully that's the case. I really, you know, I'm friendly with Lauber. He's got my full support behind him. I would really like to see them kind of, I don't have the stats to pull up in front of me, and I wish I did, but I know the Zealots, or at least the way I remember it, is that Zealots got off kind of, you know, they got off to a rough start as well in HGC EU, and then as the season kind of progressed, that team got a lot better. And I'd like to see, that'd be really cool to see if the Leftovers can kind of replicate, not saying that they need to finish 4th, but kind of replicate it where they play a little better at the end of the season. So next up we have on the docket is North America. Our favorite scene, the most entertaining scene, if not the strongest scene, but certainly the most entertaining. So for the most, similarly, we had a lot of par for the course here. The top of the table looks like it the way it's supposed to be. You've got Team 12, Tempo Storm, and Team Freeding sitting in 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Trailing them is Gale Force, Simplicity, Space Station Gaming, all sitting at 1-1 in the 4, 5, and 6 positions. And then the 2 new teams that rose up from the amateur scene, Heroes Hearth and LFM Esports. Heroes Hearth is 0-1, and LFM Esports is 0-2, but did pick up a map win. So they did win a map against one of the old veteran teams of the scene.
They should not have won that game.
There were quite. It was Throw City, but that's. Let's dive right into that.
Got to learn how to play Sky Temple at some point.
Give me some of your thoughts on LFM. We'll start there.
So LFM I like a lot. The fact that they this week streamed their replay analysis, I jumped into that, and it was really good to see them pointing out stuff, rewinding, and going back to see, okay, exactly what happened. They made some really rookie mistakes in their match against Team 12 that they were able to point out, and they had a really good attitude about in their stream. They were kind of laughing at how basic some of their errors were, but then stopping to focus on them. I think that there are some really good players on that team. I mean, Specialty, Draded, these guys have been around forever.
Yeah.
So I do expect them to, if they can continue to have a solid attitude about, where they are just in reality. Like we said, coming from the open division is a really, really hard transition, especially when you're going to struggle to get good scrims being the brand new team. So I do expect a lot more out of them, but they absolutely should have gone 0-6 this week if Space Station was a little bit more in control of how they play Sky Temple. For some reason, they seem to have a Sky Temple block, because all of their games on Sky Temple this week were things that they'd like to not have happen again. Is the polite way to put that again? They threw at Boss 5v4, and that's just not a thing that you should do if you're a professional team with good, smart players.
Yeah.
So they managed to throw away 2 Sky Temple games that they'd probably like back. But LFM got a map win, which might come into play down the line if they're fighting with somebody else for Crucible. But based on what we saw this week, I think they're destined for the Crucible. It'll just be a matter of, did they learn enough this split to survive the Crucible against whoever rises up in the open division to come back the next split as a contender for that 5th, 6th.
Right, and there are some rumblings of some former pro teams getting put together for that as well, so something to be mindful of. I really like that what Hero Physio did. I follow him in a couple of different Discord servers, and I know he said that they didn't really give, obviously they didn't give away anything too specific. It was just kind of really generic information, but it was... it's really good to see the team they are trying to be a part of the community in that respect, that nice olive branch, because there seems to always be that, I don't know why it's there, but there seems to be this animosity between just casual fans and like the pro scene, and there shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's real interesting to be a Heroes HGC fan right now. I had to take a couple of days off of Reddit because it was bumming me out, and we're gonna yell a little bit later about the memes of stale meta, but yeah, it's interesting to see that dynamic right now. I think part of it is the pros do need to do a better job of being an active part of the community and didn't really help themselves early on. A lot of it is stuff we've talked about before with the dichotomy between the quick match player and the competitive player, because they're literally playing 2 different video games that are just in the same client. But yeah, I think doing stuff like streaming your replay analysis, being active on Reddit, on Twitter, being able to recognize where you're at. For those that are asking in the chat, Figgy streamed the replay analysis, so I would go to his Twitch channel and see if it's a replay there. I caught like 30 minutes of it live. And I'm doing a show right now, so I'm not going to go hunting for it.
Yeah, pull it up.
Then you'd miss my wonderful analysis and witty personality.
That's what it is, right? As well, I thought there's some other interesting things happening in NA that I didn't quite expect. Simplicity played a little better than I thought. I didn't expect him to be as, or maybe it's so those teams that are in the middle of the pack in NA right now, and even Heroes Hearth, we don't really have enough information to kind of like make the determination on them. But my knee-jerk reaction, which is really all the internet cares about, is I think Simplicity's better than I thought. Like, I called him Lagif 2.0 like 2 weeks ago, or yeah, 2 weeks ago on the show, and that might have been unfair. They were really competitive with Gale Force. Yes, they lost to them, but it was 3-2. It was close, and they whooped Space Station fairly handily, and I really didn't expect that, to be honest with you. And I expected Space Station to be better. I thought that maybe they were the fourth or fifth team in NA, and they threw against LFM, and they got whooped by Simplicity. And I have now, if Heroes Hearth is as good as the rumors are brewing, Space Station might be a Crucible team this split, which is not what I would have expected.
Yeah, Space Station is very interesting to me because, like, I follow the hero scene pretty closely. I talk to players pretty regularly. Casanova was one of the players that voted in my All-Pro community awards. I did not know that they were doing this insane role swap. I like that.
For the longest time, we all thought Cass was going to be tanking, right?
Yeah, we thought Cass was going to be tanking. We thought Jason was going to be their flexi guy, and Jay Schroeder was going to be mostly playing assassins, and that is not what they did, and it's very, very strange to me. If they do it again this week, I'm going to have to reach out to some folks and have a chat, because I don't want to rag on them too hard for it if they've got some strategies going on for it. But, I mean, the one game that they dominated in, they went back to their old lineup, and yeah, it was a ridiculous Lost Vikings cheese comp, but they like the synergy there with two brand new players, like they executed that perfectly against a decent team. I don't know. Equinox, we saw him on tanks with Gale Force. He, after that, said he felt so much more comfortable in the off lane on melees. Maybe he just doesn't like playing the double warrior, so he's leaning into committing to warrior. Maybe he's falling into this fallacy that the entire HOTS community has, that your shot caller has to be on tank. I don't know what it is, but I need to see something radically different before this week, before I have any sort of confidence in this role swap.
Absolutely. You've got to see it work before you commit to it. I like to believe in the decision making of the team. It's just, you know what, I'm a little bit of an old-timey, old fogey in this respect. I'm not a big fan of change, and I'm a creature of habit, and that's why when I have to produce the show, I'm a mess. But it's also why when you have something that's working, right, if it's not broke, why fix it, right? Like, I thought Casanova did a great job tanking in Phase 2 last year.
He was great.
I thought he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And here we are. And that's what wasn't the case this past weekend. So I don't know. They know more than I do. They obviously scrim. They work together. Let's put it that way. They work together every day. And they know more. They have a lot more information to pull from than we do. All we have are the few matches we get to see over the weekend. So I just hope that it was the right decision that they came to. Let's see. What else did I want to notate?
We should talk about Simplicity some more.
Yeah, I agree. So do you have any thoughts on them besides the fact that similar to what I had, which is I couldn't believe they looked as strong as they did? I don't want to say strong, but better.
I've talked with Kath a little bit, and he said that he and K1 have wanted to play with Zuna for a while, and it just never really worked out timing-wise where they were both available at the same time. And K1 has wanted to move to support for several months now.
He looked really strong on the role, surprisingly.
Yeah, he's got a deeper roster of supports than you would expect from somebody that's brand new to the role. And what I've said all off season is that this is a team with a stupid amount of upside. Like, it's entirely possible that every single member of this team, except for Hosty, is completely washed up and should have been kicked out of the league a year ago and is garbage and can't actually play the video game anymore. It's also possible that they're all world championship caliber and are going to find the right mix to all of a sudden become top 2, top 3 in the league. I mean, every single member of this team, except for Hosty, has been elite in North America at one point. Airho was a phenomenal tank when Bob Ross Fan Club was a thing.
He was NA's best Dahaka, too, at one point.
Oh, yeah, but far and away. Zuna had the put me on something I can carry with and I'll win us this tournament moment a couple of years ago. We know what K1 and CAF can do. And Hosty looked incredible on Hanzo. Like, I thought it was weird that they were putting him on Hanzo instead of Zuna, but yeah, give Hosty the hero every single time. Like, holy crap!
No, I don't have the actual. I didn't jot this down, and I should have. And I usually take good notes over the weekend, but I got sidetracked, kind of doing this side commentary with Buddy Ganjagoon, so I didn't take notes, but. It seemed like I noticed there were a lot of flexes playing Hanzo as opposed to the carries, and I thought that was interesting. I don't know why that's the case, but it seemed that way because Hanzo essentially replaced Vala in the meta, and I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes here. And that was, I mean, the Valas were essentially played by the carries, and I didn't see a lot of Hanzos being played by the carries, but that's just what I noticed, and I could be wrong. I just maybe perception is not always accurate.
I'm wondering if part of it, because Hanzo is not in a lot of instances, Hanzo is not really your auto attack carry so much as he's a caster that because his ricochet thingy is kind of broken right now against camps. He's kind of more of a jungler, a immortal shredder kind of role with the long range initiation ultimate. He kind of serves a different role in a team than the right click carry your Vala, your Tracer, your Cassia kind of role, based on how his kit is right this second.
That if that's the case, that would make plenty of sense. It's just that, and I guess that would explain why we saw Hosty on the Hanzo then. So. Let's see. I lost my train of thought. What'd you think of the new Gale Force? And then we'll talk about Heroes Earth after that. And I think we'll leave the top 3 alone because those kind of went as expected.
B-Kid is a really good mouthfeel.
Yeah.
Like he showed bright moments with Naventic at the end of the season, but it's kind of surprising to me because he was.
It was like the only thing he played, or at least what I noticed. It was like mouth ale every game. I wonder if I can pull that up real quick.
I mean, if you've got a mouth ale like that, why wouldn't you? But like, he has transitioned to the off lane dramatically better than I thought he would, because he was kind of struggling as a tank ever since the end of his time on Gale Force. And I was kind of worried that he was going to be kind of drummed out of the league when he got moved off of tank while still on Naventic, because it's kind of like if you've got a true tank and you're not trusting him to play tank, there's probably some issues there. But he's transitioning well. Udall looks comfortable. Fury is still really good at being a tank. I think they're going to only get stronger and be a contender for top 3.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. He played 2 games as Dahaka, 5 games as Malthael. So a lot of Malthael this last weekend.
Imagine if there were 3 bans and you could target it to see what his hero pool was like.
Right? Unfortunately, if that's going to happen, we're not going to see it until phase 2, which is a shame, honestly. But we didn't get it. What'd you think of Heroes Hearth? So they lost to Tempo Storm. They lost 3-1. Give me some thoughts, and if anything, just give me some thoughts on Volskaya in that 34-minute match.
That was rough to watch.
You think so? I mean,
I mean, it was fun.
I feel like a back and forth 34-minute match. Like a lot of people hate on it, but like I think that would be entertaining. It's like, you know, one of my greatest memories is I'm a big Syracuse fan, and one of the funnest games to ever watch was the 6 overtime game against UConn and the Big East tournament. It was like 6 years ago at this point. That was to me, that's a lot of fun. So when you have a back and forth that kind of drags on like that, I don't know, I think that's kind of entertaining. But the Heroes community kind of blew up about it, like, this map is stupid, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, it's either that or it's 5-minute matches on Warhead. Pick your poison, all right? We just don't have 9 really great maps right now. I'm sorry, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the Smash Brothers argument where like a stage is broken, it should be banned, but you can't replace it with anything, and you've got to have a set number of maps in order for the league to function. And like, Volskaya is not whoever decided that conveyor belts should be on a map in a game with competitive ranked mode should not have their job anymore. Like it's ridiculous. It's dumb. It looks dumb. It makes the map play awkward. It makes the bottom a complete nonsense nothingness. So the map is nonsense to watch. And that was the map that we got a 34-minute game on. And to your point about Syracuse, that was a back and forth affair like you're talking about. That was epic. If you go back and watch the Tempo versus Hero Star, it really isn't back and forth. It's basically Tempo conceding ground for 25 minutes and then narrowly staying alive in a couple of fights and then finally winning one fight and not respecting global ETC quick enough to protect their core.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't a back and forth match. It was really just the comp that Heroes Hearth put together against the comp that Tempo had that made it hard for Tempo to finish, even though they were winning 100% of the video game.
Do you think that the Asmodan was also part of the trigger for the Heroes community? They just don't want to see Asmodan in competitive?
Dude, I don't know what the friggin' Heroes community wants. Like, you're talking about how the meta is stale, and you got a Lost Vikings cheese comp, you got an Asmodan cheese comp, you got 40 out of 60 heroes picked over the weekend. Like, I think in Korea you got shock and awe on Falstad in one game. Like, what do you friggin' want? Like, are you not going to be happy until Gazlo? Like, is that just the world that we live in, that the meta is stale unless someone's picking Gazlo? Because I don't want to live in that world. That world sucks to me. Gazlo is a stupid hero that should not be in a competitive game. He's very fun in quick match, and it's fun to see K1 pick him in open bracket tournaments and murder kids because that is hilarious. But I don't want it in my tournaments. I want refined comps and established compositions that teams have practiced that work, and the occasional cheese. And that's what we've got right now. And to me, it's great. Like, to me, the meta is phenomenal.
Sounds like it's a healthy, balanced diet with the occasional dessert.
Yeah. Like, you got a 34-minute Asmodan game. How is the meta stale?
Listen,
explain it to me.
I've just come to the conclusion it's the internet, man, and the vocal minority are the unhappy people, and it's important to remember those are the people that hop on to complain about things, and sometimes they get a snowball rolling and they get people to like chime in who like kind of think that but aren't really, like, I don't know, fully vested in that opinion, if that makes sense. So that's my opinion on the matter. I just think the vocal minority hops on Reddit and throws it out there, and they right or wrong, they are the minority and not the majority. The majority, unfortunately, are happy with things, and they just don't voice how happy they are. That's all. So
the one argument I did see that I kind of agree with is the fact that so many people are frustrated by Genji and Hanzo in their games, and so it's frustrating to then watch those heroes win competitive games because it makes it feel even more hopeless for your games. To which I say, go play a draft mode where there are bans and join the train that's asking for a third ban so that you can ban those heroes that annoy you more. And then you won't have to deal with them as much, and you won't be as upset, and everyone will be happy, and the world will be right again. But yeah, the meta is fine. It's great. We saw friggin' Tychus. When was the last time you saw Tychus? And we saw him a bunch.
I've seen a bunch of Jaina too. Don't
Yeah.
even sleep on that.
And we saw weird
I'll see if I
builds.
can pull that up. Like, we haven't seen Jaina in forever, and all of a sudden she's the new hotness, and I love it. Seeing that Dreadlord skin.
We saw support Alex. Like, we saw so many things. Just because Greymane and Genji were fighting for first pick does not mean the meta is stale. We saw so many interesting things.
The last couple things I want to touch on before we dive, we actually do take a look at the meta analysis that I have from Master League, is I want to talk about China. I did not get I worked doubles, and I worked Monday and Tuesday, and my doubles include the overnight shift, so I slept this morning while the rest of the Chinese games were going on. So I did not catch any of China, but I was able to pull up the standings, and I am familiar with the teams from last year, except for the new teams, obviously. And I was able to, walk away from the standings with a couple of interesting tidbits. I don't know if you can chime in on them at all, Trent.
Nope.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to pull this up, and I will point this out to our listeners. Challenge, remember CE from BlizzCon, they also went to the midseason brawl. No, sorry, they did not go to the midseason brawl. They failed to go to the midseason brawl. But they went to the Clash, and they went to BlizzCon. They were typically not very successful internationally. They rocketed off to an amazing start in week 1 in China. They are 6-0. They do best of 2s in China. 6-0. 12-0 in map score. So they did not drop a map. They went 2-0 in all their sets, sitting on top of the table with 18 points. Now, keep in mind, China, everyone runs a little differently than the rest of the world. Their league is, it's all best of 2s. You get bonus points for sweeping. You get, I believe it's 2 points for a 2-0, 1 point for a win, 0 points for a loss, if I remember correctly. Now, right on their heels, though, is Super Perfect Team, a team we saw, I'm pretty sure, represent the Chinese region at literally every single international event last year. I think both Western Clashes, the Midseason Brawl, and BlizzCon. They went 5-1. They have an 11-1 map score, so they're right there with them. The third Chinese team that represented China at BlizzCon was Beyond the Game, and they struggled. They're sitting at 1-1-4. So 1 win, 1 draw, and 4 losses in the opening week of China. Sitting at a 3-9 map score. Very surprising, because that was a team that it came out of nowhere. They were new to the Chinese scene, completely, entire team in Phase 2 last year. Caught everyone by surprise and ended up being the third best team in China. Really, really rough week 1. Well, it's a small sample size. It's just week 1. Not a big deal. But it's something to keep an eye on in case they continue to struggle. I know at some point, and I don't want to throw anything out there or promise anything, but I would like to get Tetcher and Tetcher on the show again, and Kendrick on the show for the first time at some point, so we can talk a little bit more in depth about China, because they are the ones who cast it, and they are very knowledgeable about that scene. And the last thing I want to pull up here is I want to talk about DB Smiley's ELO ratings. So he published the updated ELO ratings after week 1. I'm going to copy the link here. I'm going to paste it in chat for everyone here. Boom. In first place, we've got KSV Black with an ELO rating of 1895. Obviously, they handily won GCWC, handily won BlizzCon. They are continuously they are the what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. The standard. They are the standard that other teams hope to achieve. But I don't have the pre-week 1 score in front of me, but I'm sure they lost a ton of ELO due to losing to Tempest. Not as bad as losing to like Red Canids, but losing to Tempest 3-0 no less is pretty devastating. Team Dignitas sitting in second place, again, based on the players that they have on that roster and how they performed at GCWC with an ELO of 1788. Ballistics Gaming, third at 1738. Fnatic in fourth. Method in fifth. And I'm done reading the numbers at this point. Tempest in sixth. Temple Storm in seventh. Super Perfect Team in eighth. Team LiQuiD in ninth. And CE in 10th. You'll notice that Team 12, a team that we all believe is very, very good, is sitting all the way down at 12. DB already addressed that. The Elo scores should get better as the season progresses and more accurate. And right now they're in flux because of roster moves and because teams like Tempo Storm didn't go to GCWC and get their Elo ratings submarined by losing to teams like SPT. So
yeah, Team 12 got bodied in these rankings. They probably should be 6th or 7th, but they decided to lose everything at Gold Club.
Exactly. So that really hurt them. He predicted that as the season goes on, that one glaring outlier will probably correct itself.
When they body Tempo this week.
That's going to be an exciting matchup, which we'll talk about shortly. Spoilers.
Let's do it.
Right now, I'm going to pull up the Master League pages I have, and I thought some things were interesting. So the one thing I want to notice is NA seems to be putting a lot of emphasis on Lucio as their main support choice. Korea seems to enjoy a lot of Uther. EU is big into Rhaegar, and China kind of is like a blend of both. They play a lot of Uther and Lucio. So I thought that was interesting, and I can't really put my thumb onto the reason why. But so I've got NA pulled up right now, and it's 100% popularity on Genji, Greymane, and Hanzo, which we kind of already knew. We were seeing them in every match, but it was 100% popularity on Lucio as well, which was interesting to me. In EU, it's kind of similar except for the supports. It's Genji 100%, Greymane 95, Hanzo 80, Rhaegar 95, and Lucio all the way down at 42% popularity. So pick ban. That's your combined pick ban rate, by the way, for those who aren't sure what that means. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, going off of very little actual data outside of that, my curiosity would be that NA is typically worse than other regions at rotations, and Lucio is one of the best heroes at punishing bad rotations. So you've got more teams in North America that you can consistently punish with Lucio than you can in EU or Korea. So Lucio becomes much more powerful than he would be in other regions that are a bit more disciplined in their rotations.
The other thing that's interesting, and I'm kind of curious as to why this is Rhaegar, despite his 95% popularity, his popularity in EU, 31% win rate.
Isn't most of that Zealots, though? Like, they picked him basically every game, and they played 2 matches, where most teams only played 1.
I would have to literally go in and look at it team by team to get those numbers.
Yeah.
I can't.
I wish I could. Statement, someone in Twitch will disagree with me, so I'm going to say a declarative statement, and then someone will point me wrong. The only reason that Rhaegar has the percentages that he has is because that's the only hero that Shad has ever played in his entire life. Have fun, Twitch chat.
You know what it is? It's when you make statements like that, you are actually using you're manipulating the masses to do research for you. So now you don't have to do research, and they're going to find out the facts for you. That's how that works.
There was actually, to go completely off topic, I remember a comic when I used to play World of Warcraft that was literally like, if you want advice, get your friend to give you the wrong answer in general chat, and then a bunch of people will get mad that someone said something wrong and give you the correct answer.
That's funny. And you know what? That's like exactly, that's the perfect metaphor for this.
So yeah, but in all seriousness, I do think that Zealots, by the fact that they played 2 series that were both longer series, because LiQuiD was 3-2 and they I think neither series was a 3-0 if I'm correct, because they took a game off Tricked, I believe. Looking now, installing for time. Yeah, they took a map off of Tricked, and they went 3-2 with Zealots. So that's a lot of Rhaegar from one team to inflate those stats. So I would be very curious to see what those numbers are like if you remove Zealots from the equation.
I wish I could filter it a little bit more easily, but unfortunately, I can't just I can't click the hero and then sort it by teams within that. After that, you have to go to I don't know. You have to go to each team individually and see what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm sure someone will figure it out for me.
Right?
But it's interesting because I even remember I was in the Heroes Hearth Discord and someone was blown away by how much Rhaegar was being picked when EU was going on, and I do think a lot of it is people on a new role. Rhaegar is a very reliable. He's got a cleanse. He's got one of the best burst heals in the game.
And he's still got wave clear more so than most supports.
Yeah, he's a solid jungler still. He just got a mecha skin that's amazing. I don't blame anybody for picking him. He may not be optimal, but he's always going to be slightly relevant because he has cleanse and he has ancestral.
So branching off and looking at the worldwide meta, so I took all 4 regions and I took their group phase 1, filtered by phase 1 of their particular HGCs. It looks like this. We've got Greymane at 99% popularity because he's the perfect hero, and he has been forever. Literally has the perfect kit. Genji sitting at 95% popularity. Hanzo, the Shimada brothers, sitting at 2 and 3. 92% for Hanzo, 95% popularity for Genji. ETC still sitting pretty at 82%. It's kind of funny how he went from booty butt cheeks and 0 changes made, and now he's 82% popularity. I am not a high-level Heroes player by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not an analyst, but I do think that's interesting. It's probably just a shift in the meta that made him more viable. Lucio sitting at 74% popularity, and that is your top 5. Uther right behind him at 60%. Now, as far as win rate goes in that top 5, it's Greymane actually has a sub 50% win rate, and so does Lucio, which I find kind of interesting. ETC is the sitting pretty one with a 63% win rate. And the guy that's leading the way in bans, it looks like, Genji, 75 bans this past weekend worldwide. So, despite all the Genji nerfs,
Genji's a real good hero.
Despite all the Genji nerfs, when you put him in the hands of a pro, he's actually just still really good. To the surprise of absolutely no one.
Yeah, his kit just does all of the things. If there's anything that you want to do, Genji can do it. And generally, one of the most common strategies in pro level play is to get as many things as you can on your side. And if you have more things that you can do than the other team, generally you'll win. And so if you get Genji, you have all the things.
That's also why Greymane is literally the perfect hero. Because aside from he has mobility, Vala mobility, but he doesn't have Genji mobility, but he's basically got everything else, and he's got enough mobility. So,
I actually think Greymane is sort of a trap hero for a lot of teams.
Really? You think he's a little bit of a crutch because he just fits into everything perfectly, or
he sort of fits into my Johanna and March Leoric thing, where I'm incorrect on paper, but in practice, I feel like the low win rate of Greymane is partly because... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Justin memed you about the Johanna thing this past weekend.
Yeah, he is a false prophet spreading lies. Everyone go unfollow Justin right now, because he will lead you astray and tell you that Johanna is a good hero when she is the worst. Anyway, I think Greymane, like you said, on paper, he feels like he does all of the things, but really he kind of doesn't, because once he's in, he goes squish very, very quickly. He doesn't have any... His one escape is on a pretty long cooldown when you're actually in the middle of a fight with a bunch of crowd control. And so if you don't actually build a comp around Greymane being successful, a Divine Shield, a Sanctification, these sorts of things. We're also in a meta where Arthas is really, really popular, and teams that aren't super great aren't prioritizing not picking Greymane into Arthas. I think there's a number of things that actually make Greymane seem really great, but he's not a pick that you can pick into every single comp like you can a Genji. And so I think that accounts somewhat for his lower win rate, because inferior teams are first picking him in every situation regardless, rather than building comps around what makes him so great, because he really actually isn't an all-around hero anymore after his cocktail changes. He's really a burst assassin. He has a lot more in common with Zeratul than he does with like a Genji.
I think that's fair. I don't know if I necessarily 100% agree, but I think it's very fair. All good points.
Yeah.
Now, the last thing I want to touch on, as we covered last week's games, is I actually have, and hopefully this works, hashtag production, I have the top 3 Twitch clips from last weekend's games. So I'm going to press this transition button, and I'm going to unhide this Twitch clip, and it's going to play right now.
That is a Triglav protector.
Wait.
That is a
there we
Triglav
go. Now
protector.
it's going to play.
They have to find some way. That is 3
So,
members down.
This is this was the number 3 Twitch clip of the weekend, and it was the end of
going for the back door.
Tempo Storm HGC.
He needs to go to the back door. There's
this
no
was the catapult from the
Asmodee makes it back
that triggered
18%,
everyone.
12%. Cattle
Where we
stage
got to
dive
see
around
Cattle
the core, and he will
stage dive
take
in
it down in
and
the
take
nick
them
of
down.
time. A 34
Nerf 30-minute
minute
catapults.
game.
Holy cow.
That was wild.
They do so much damage.
So
that is a Triglav protector. They have to find some way.
The next one I have here is, if I'm remembering correctly, it's Team Freedom stealing the boss. Let's see if I can get that playing. Here we go. It's Team Freedom playing Gale Force.
Their side.
Was this
and
too slow?
at first it looks like Gale Force had handily won that boss fight, and
that's going to be Sakura going down murdered. Nice kill, nice follow-up. Gale Force executing so well, but Team Freedom is looking to continue to take this.
This is actually in
Dragon Blade is out. That's 2 members down on the side of Gale Force.
Oh man, Lutano is executing Gale Force Esports. They are gone. They are out of here. Team Freedom wipes the board with Gale Force Esports, even losing their Murden at the start of that fight.
I don't blame people for disliking Genji.
I'm going to let that play again because I'm a Team Freedom homer, and I'm a big fan of people who bust their hump and get places because of it, so that makes me also a big Lutano fan. So we're going to play that again, and I'm just going to watch him murder nerds right now. Oh, this is
Dragon Blade is out. That's 2 members down on the side of
Gale. So it's 4v5, just like the Space
executing
Station
Gale Force
Pro.
Esports. They are gone. They are
they clump
out
up
of here.
real
Team Freedom
hard into a
wipes
Dragon
the board with Gale
Strike,
Force
which is not
Esports.
great.
Even
The sound barrier is super late, but that's a lot of burst damage that just kind of comes out of nowhere.
It looks like Gale Force handily won that boss for a second after they got that early pick. And then it was just Jaina. It was a combination too. Jaina and Genji and Rip.
A show that was more focused on production and probably was on YouTube would analyze that frame by frame like 30 times, because there's so much just that happens perfectly there for Freedom and goes oh so horribly wrong for Gale Force. But credit to Freedom for
the fireworks.
Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Like that is why Heroes of the Storm is a good esport, is moments like that where things just happen all of a sudden and everyone is dead and you just win the game.
For sure. It's that explosion of action is what makes it really so visible. And kind of why we all latched onto it, right? So now with the highs come the lows and the lows come the highs, and I have the most watched clip of the weekend coming from HGC Korea. So check this out, guys.
Locked in, Wolf. There we go, Modern Life.
We've got Wolf and G-Clef bringing the best to us. I love how they predict what's going to happen here.
Clumped up. Here they go. Modern Life could get the ley line.
And nothing happens. Let's see. Modern,
here we go.
It is your chance.
He's not going to do it, though.
Drop on your ley line.
There it comes.
Here comes
the
Dragon Strike. But no
damage, not at all.
And that was
not even a single.
Not even one damage
top most played HGC Twitch clip of the weekend.
Here we go, Modern Life. Watch him.
That
Might
was
be a moment here for them
sorry,
to get the
hold
change.
on,
Everyone's
stop
bumped up
it.
or
Get back
clumped
to
up.
our
Here
other
they go.
screen.
Modern Life.
Boom. Yeah, so the Dragon Strike that literally did 0 damage in HGC Korea, that was the #1 Twitch clip. Classic Heroes. It was comical. It was set up by the Leyline seal, but because Dragon Strike has that massive wind-up time, even pros sometimes have trouble timing it. So.
That is a very bad heroic. It's not good. Like, why would you ever take that over an Ash Arrow?
I think we saw it all the time. I think, if I remember correctly, they were seeing it all the time. I remember Wolf complaining about it. Wolf and Jukov complaining about it in Korea.
Have none of these people played League of Legends? Like, do you know how good Ash Arrow is? Like, it's really good. It's really, really good. You should pick it.
Dragon Strike has its place. It's just...
No, it doesn't. You have Ash Arrow. You have a ranged AoE stun that you can shoot from super far away. You always pick it.
I guess.
Or you can stand there for 30 seconds and like make a sandwich while Dragon Strike comes at you.
I guess. Well, the thing is if that would have landed perfectly, it would have done a ton of damage. It's a nice zoning tool, but I agree with you for the most part. It's too. The burden of execution, I love that expression. The burden of execution is too high for that ultimate to get enough value out of it, right? You just need the stars to align. You need it to be on the right map. You need just too many things to line up to get enough value to justify not taking the Ash Arrow. Let's put it that way. Dragon Strike, whatever it's called.
Dragon
Arrow. I don't know.
It's just it's the same thing as my whole March of the Black King thing. Like, in the situation where March is good, it's incredible. But in most situations, if you don't get it right, you just walk into the enemy team and die, and you look real dumb. And I feel like Dragon Strike is the same thing. Me personally, I would always rather have things that are reliable, things that every single time I cast them are going to do the thing that I want them to do, and that are reliable. Like, if you don't miss, Arrow is going to get some value in literally every fight, whereas Dragon Strike needs so much setup just to be relevant. And to me, like, you've got a hero that's already really good. Just pick the thing that is reliable and win the game instead of trying to set up cute stuff with the one that's cool.
I think it's fair. Now,
and don't pick March.
Now that we've beat last week into the ground, we've beat it to death. Let's look ahead at next week. You wrote 2 articles about this, and we're going to touch on them in a second. But first, I want to rip through all the matchups we got. So on Friday in Korea at 4 a.m. Eastern, we've got Blossom versus Ballistics. I'm picking that to go 1-3 in favor of Ballistics. I think that's pretty fair. Blossom looks better, but Ballistics is still probably the 2nd or 3rd best team in the world. At 6 a.m. in Korea, we have Ace versus Miracle. Ace is the new team out of the Crucible that 4-0'd versus the old MVP team. I think it's going to be competitive, but I'm thinking it's going to be 2-3 in favor of old MVP Miracle, now just Miracle. And you're up at noon Eastern. We have Method versus Fnatic. That should be a great showdown. I think it's going to, you know what? I typed that out wrong. I think Method's going to surprise a lot of people, and they're going to beat Fnatic. I wrote 3-1, but I think it's going to be 3-2. So that was a typo. At 4. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Do I get to pick stuff?
Yeah, go ahead. Pick. Throw your picks in here, man. I feel free. I have a little guest box if you want to type them in too.
I will actually predict the 3-0 for Method. I am
You're on
nervous
board.
about,
You're on
like,
board the
I
Method
think
train
Fnatic
as well.
Oh yeah, dude. They look really good. Nick is phenomenal. Schwimpy's real smart. Arcaner looks amazing. Like, I think that they are going to quickly overtake Fnatic.
I think that team, Arcaner, looked absolutely fantastic this last weekend, and I think that they're going to be great. I don't know if it's going to be a 3-0 because I do believe in the talent on Fnatic, but I still think they're going to beat Fnatic, which is going to blow a lot of people's minds. I don't think the Heroes community is ready for that.
Yeah.
After that, at 2 p.m., we've got Dignitas versus Diamond Skin on Friday. I've got Dig winning 3-0. I think that's going to be pretty cut dry, over within an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's an upset if Diamond Skin takes a game.
I agree. Moving on to North America. Here's the highlight of the weekend, in my opinion. This is going to be the most anticipated matchup. At 5 p.m. Eastern, we've got Team 12 versus Tempo. I'm picking Team 12 to go 3-1. I don't think it's going to be a 5-game set, but I do think it'll be competitive. This is the super team versus the reigning champs. This is Glaurung, formerly of Roll20, now on Tempo, going up against his old team, and his old team, throwing a little bit of shade here and there at him on various podcasts. I won't say whose. This is going to be great. This is I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I plan on doing some casual commentary stream alongside this one, because this is going to be fun. Get your popcorn ready.
Hi, Twitch chat. How you doing? You doing good? My Twitter is going to be an unbearable place if Team 12 loses this match, because I'm not actually that big a Team 12 homer. The optics for me are not great with how much I've built them up, how much I've spent the offseason defending them and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, they straight up have the best roster that North America has assembled in a good long while, and I will be very surprised and have to reevaluate lots of things that I know if Team 12 loses this match. I'm very I think it will be close, but I don't see a world where I think that Team 12 just on paper is in their own category above the rest, and everybody else is fighting for second place.
I agree. I think they are. No, I don't want to make that comparison because they lost the Super Bowl to the Giants. I think they are. I almost made the 2007 Patriots comparison. I think they are was it the 02-03 Lakers that just crushed everyone and went 16-1 in the playoffs?
That's a good comparison.
I think that's the one I'm thinking of. I think it might have been 01-02. It doesn't matter. Whatever. I was a kid. The next matchup at 7 p.m. on Friday is Team Freedom versus Heroes Hearth Esports. That's gonna be good. I didn't highlight it as a key matchup to watch on the weekend, but if Heroes Hearth is doing as well as people say they are, it should be all right. So these numbers are backwards. I'm gonna have to. I must have somewhere along the line when I was editing this on the laptop earlier today. I must have goofed something up in the copy pasta, but I'm picking Team Freedom to win this 3-1. I think it's going to be. I think it should be an interesting one to watch as far as a litmus test to see how good Heroes Hearth is when they're not playing Temple Storm, and see how good Team Freedom is. But I think Team Freedom is going to win 3-1.
Yeah, Heroes Hearth is, again, a team that is going to get better as the season goes on, and dramatically better if they survive the Crucible and get into the second split. I think they will really do some damage in the second half of the year, but I don't think that they just haven't been able to practice against elite teams when they've had to play open division teams for so long. They imported support, challenged them, and played them close. Even in death, took them to a tough series, and they are a radically better team than both of those teams. But when you only play against inferior opponents, your play stagnates, and that's just what happens. So they're going to need a couple weeks to get back into form. And unfortunately, they have to play Tempo and then Team Freedom. So it's not going to look great.
It's going to be a rough start. Team Freedom looked really good last week, and I'm glad that they are continuing to look strong despite the losing Dansky and Cure. again, it's going to be a good litmus test. If they get smacked around, then they're probably not as good as people are saying. But if they are really competitive, then maybe they are the number 4 team in the region that no one expected to be the number 4 team in the region. Moving on to Saturday in Korea at 4 a.m. All these times are in Eastern time, guys, because we are LiQuiud and I are Eastern based, and so is Trent for that matter. So it's just easy for us. Tempest plays Gluck, Gillyweed's sponsored team. I'm predicting Tempest to win 3-1. I think that's going to be pretty straightforward. Do you have any thoughts on that? Maybe a 3-0 coming from you?
I do not follow Korea close enough to be able to comment, so I will let you run the show on those.
All right. Well, then after that, Team Felice, which is basically the even and death of Korea, they backed their way in when Mighty disbanded, play KSV Black. I think KSV Black's going to 3-0, and that's pretty straightforward. Pretty boring day for Korea on Saturday as far as I'm concerned. Moving on to Europe, at noon we have Leftovers versus Tricked. This should be interesting depending on which Tricked shows up, right? So, like, if we get good Tricked, then it's going to, or as I like to call it, DirecTV Tricked. I think Tricked could 3-0. I could also see, Tricked winning 3-2 or losing if we get cable Tricked. But I'm predicting a 3-1 in favor of Tricked. I think I hedged and took the 3-1. I think Leftovers will pick up a map.
Yeah, I'd give that a 3-0. Tricked looked way better than we expected them to, and should only be better in week 2. Unless if Leftovers takes a map here, then it's a really good sign that they're starting to catch up. But I think a 3-0 is entirely reasonable.
All right. Next up at 2, we've got Diamond Skin versus LiQuiud. Based on what I saw, I think LiQuid's going to win 3-1, personally. Again, in EU, similar to Korea, these are kind of not as exciting matchups.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the big matchups happening, which means that the lower matchups are kind of underwhelming. But I actually think this could be a 3-2 affair. Like, LiQuiud will probably take it, but I have very high hopes for the Diamond Skin roster in the long run. I like any team that has a true tank that's talented, and Diamond Skin is that. So I think that there's a potential here for a 3-2. There's also a potential that LiQuiud is actually a top 2 team and 3-0s them real quick. But if LiQuiud is where we expect them to be, this will probably be a 3-1, 3-2.
There is an interesting storyline dynamic in that Darkmock is on Diamond Skin now. The team is coached by Blumby, so there are some LiQuiud roots on that roster, as well as Sport Billy is now on LiQuiud and Eternal. So it's just kind of the way things moved. They kind of swapped that, swap players. Moving on to North America. At 5, we have LFM versus GFE. I'm probably
commit to it.
I'm probably being too generous, but I think it's going to be 3-1 in favor of GFE. I think LFM is going to pick up their second map win. So I might be being too generous, but I'm a friend of Hero Physio, and I'm biased, and it's all right. I'm okay with that. So I believe in the Zen Master of Hots. All right. I'm sorry. I spoke over. What did you say for LFM versus GFE?
GFE looks way better than I expected them to. That's a 3-0.
Okay. You know what it is? That's fair. Right before the season started, I doubled back. At first I said the roster was very meh, and then I took it back and I said, you know what, the roster, it's not like a roster of all-stars, and I've compared them to the 04 Pistons, and I'm just making sports ball analogies all night. But it's a very
You're bleeding viewers.
I am, right? I'm scaring them all away. Sports ball. Everyone is very, very, very capable at their role, and it is a role that they are comfortable playing. There's no one in a new role. You know what I mean? These are players playing roles that they have found success at in the past. So that's why I like the roster. It's just not a roster of superstars, which is kind of the opposite approach that they usually go. Next up, we have Heroes Hearth versus Space Station, and this should be really competitive, in my opinion. Now, if Space Station is worse than we thought, then It won't be. But if they are as good as I think they are, and then Heroes Earth is as good as advertised, then this is going to be a really great series. I don't have it highlighted because it doesn't have any like the spiciness of like a 1v2 or like two teams that hate each other going at it. But it is interesting as far as a litmus test goes and figuring out where these teams stack up in NA. I picked Heroes Earth. I think Heroes Earth is going to win it 3-2.
To me, this is actually the match of the week. Like Team 12 versus Tempo is obviously the match of the week because it's 1 versus 2. It's the fan bases fighting against each other. It's me staking my like credibility,
your reputation as a writer.
Amazing. Oh yeah, I'm gonna get blown up for weeks. But I am actually radically more interested in this matchup, specifically because of the way both teams played in week 1. I think both teams, like the rosters of each team are very, very good. I like 4/5 of both rosters. I like all of Space Station's roster a lot, but the role swap is very interesting to me. I try really hard not to make snap judgments off of week 1 in any game just because it's week 1. Teams test stuff. Like we never know what week 1 has no bearing on the rest of the season for most teams. So it'll be very interesting. But for me, these are two teams that are potentially fighting for that 7th place spot. And this is a match that's going to determine that and inform a lot of how these teams make decisions going forward for the rest of the season, as well as any potential roster changes that they make after midseason brawl. So to me, this game has huge implications for both teams. And it's two teams that I really, really like personally. So I'm going to be glued to the Twitch channel for that match.
Your Tuchus is going to be sitting in your ergonomic esports chair, ready to cheer and munch on some popcorn. I hear you. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of litmus test matches to kind of really figure out how good teams that still have a lot of question marks about where they stack up. Those matches are really interesting to me. Now they don't necessarily always get as much publicity as like a 1v2 or grudge matches do, but it's certainly a matchup to note because it's interesting. It speaks volumes about where NA is also as a whole, not just these two teams. All right, moving on to Sunday. In Korea, we've got Miracle versus Tempest at 4 a.m. I'm picking Tempest 3-1. At 6 a.m., we've got Blossom versus Ace. I'm picking Blossom to win 3-1. Pretty straightforward. Europe. After that, we've got Europe at noon. We've got Zealots versus Fnatic. It's the knee-jerk reaction to the new Zealots. I think Fnatic's going to win 3-1 because of that. Not a huge fan of the new Zealots roster, or not, well, the way they played. And then at 2, we've got Dignitas versus Method. And now, earlier in the week, I picked Method to beat Fnatic, but I don't think Method is on Dignitas' level. But I think this is going to be another 1-2. We don't really know who the 2 is in EU right now, but I think we will after this weekend. And I think this is going to be it. And I think Dignitas is going to win 3-2. And I think these teams are going to throw haymakers at each other. And this is going to be like Tyson Holyfield. This is going to be great. Sports ball.
Yeah, that should be a really good match. I'm super interested, and it'll tell us a lot about how strong Dignitas is. Like if Method wins against Fnatic convincingly, and then Dignitas 3-0s them, there's potential that Dignitas is good enough to challenge KSV at the midseason brawl. The international implications of this weekend are very, very interesting for both regions, because we're going to see the top teams play against each other, and the way that they play against the top teams will give us a lot of info about how they could potentially stack up against the international teams. So I'm very interested to see that game go. I do expect Dignitas to win it, but I will be revising my prediction after I see what they do to Fnatic.
This is my second most anticipated matchup of the weekend. Unfortunately, it's on Sunday, and I have work in the afternoon on Sunday. So I'm going to catch like the first match, and then I'm going to have to leave. So, bummer. moving on to North America, we have Simplicity versus Team 12 at 5 p.m. I'm picking Team 12 to win 3-1. I think that's fair. I think Simplicity might pick up one game. They do look a little bit stronger than expected, but I think Team 12 is just miles ahead of everyone in NA, so I expect them to win 3-1. You?
I will go with a 3-0 for Team 12. Okay. We'll know more after the tempo match. Simplicity, like you said, looked better than we expected them to this week, but I still think that roster is going to have to go through some growing pains, whereas Team 12 got all their growing pains out at Gold Club. It's still only week 2. I don't think Simplicity is yet at the place where they can challenge the top 3. So I'm guessing 3-0, potentially 3-1 if there's some cheese that happens, but most likely a 3-0.
Okay. And then the last match of the week is Team Freedom versus Tempo at 7. And the reason why I highlighted this one and I really like this one is I'm a Team Freedom homer, and because it's 2 versus 3 essentially, right? We don't know who the 2 or the 3 is in NA. Like, it's a toss-up. It's the media poll suggests it's Team Freedom by a hair, or the other way around. I can't remember. But regardless, I'm picking Freedom to win 3-2, and however the Team 12 Tempo Storm series shakes out really is going to define how exciting this matchup is. Similar to how the Method Fnatic series will define how exciting the Dig Method series is, right? Like, if Method loses to Fnatic, then Method playing Dig is a little less exciting because they're not really the 2. And if Tempo beats Team 12, then this matchup, I guess it doesn't matter as much. If Tempo loses to Team 12, this kind of determines who's really the number 2. And then if Tempo beats Team 12, then I guess we get to see if Team Freedom is better than Team. I don't know. My argument's falling apart as I flesh it out in my head. But regardless, I'm excited for this matchup because these are 2 very competitive teams, and I expect Team Freedom to win 3-2. What do you think?
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I think the reason this is also interesting is it tells us a lot about Team 12. You know, if Team 12 bodies Tempo and then Tempo plays a close match against Freedom, it tells us more about how strong
Team 12 is.
Team 12 is. If they play close, if Tempo wins that and then Freedom wins, everything we know about the world is in question, and it's all pure chaos, and it's going to be the most awesome split that we've ever seen, but North America is going to get bodied at the midseason brawl.
And the clash.
You know, there's just so much that we don't know, and I love it. Why was this not week 1? I guess you don't want to manufacture stuff that way, but
it's crazy. We could barely highlight. I'm coming off as harsh right now of something I do a podcast about, but I think also puts me in a unique position to critique things because I kind of watch it underneath a microscope. I could barely highlight any of the matchups last week, and this week there's like 4 or 5, and then there's matchups I would have highlighted last week that I'm not highlighting this week. You know what I mean? Like, this week is going to be an amazing week for viewership as a viewer, but it should have been week 1 because that is when the hype is, at its peak, man.
Yeah, we didn't have a single great storyline matchup last week out of any of our matches. And they're all this week. Like, why weren't half of them this week and half of them last week or something? I guess you don't want to manufacture and manipulate your schedule that way, but at the same time, why not? Because last week's schedule was not great. Like, your marquee teams all played against bottom tier teams, and this weekend you've got everything, which means you won't have any of those marquee matchups for the rest of the split until the Western Clash. Like, we're not going to get Tempo versus Freedom closer when they're fighting for 2 and 3 for the Western Clash. Now we're not going to get Tempo versus Team 12 closer to that when there's drama. We're getting it in week 2. I don't know.
So that is the other side of the argument in that respect, the other side of the coin. I will say this. I think it's fair to say that there might be some surprising finishes as the season progresses, like some teams that'll do better or worse than we expected, and that'll result in some of the matchups that we looked at we're looking at in like week 5 as being like and all of a sudden they're like, oh, that's going to be a really spicy matchup, you know, with a lot weighing on it. So there will be some curveballs to sports ball to
You just can't stop.
I just can't stop. I can't. It's the way. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Esports is the way I was raised. All right. Let's. Before I transition into the amateur scene and your storylines articles, I want to just have a little humble brag. So I set up a little scoring system for LiQuiuD and I for the challenge, and it's 0 points if you got the match wrong when you predicted it. It's 1 point if you picked the correct winner of the match, and 2 points if you correct the perfect match score, as well as the winner. So you got one extra bonus point for perfect match score. And coming out of week 1, and this is not including China, this is just Korea, EU, and NA. Bahgz is sitting pretty with 25 points, and LiQuiuD, kind of putzing along there at 12 points. So feel better, man, and feels bad, man. 12 points.
Kicking a man when he's down. Can't even be here to defend himself. He's doubled over a toilet right now, retching up nothing because he's already thrown up 7 times today. And you're just like, yeah, I'm smarter than you at esports. Nice job, though.
Feels bad, man.
How many
but not for me.
How many possible points are there?
You know what? So that
25 out of
honestly, I don't even know if I did really great. That was I thought about that after I added up. I'm like, I wonder what that's out of, because that could be like 25 out of like 75, and maybe LiQuiuD just did like atomically bad, and I was just like the less atomically bad picker. So, moving away from that, you wrote some articles, because we're still in the preview section as far as I'm concerned. You wrote some articles for storylines to follow in week 2 in NA and EU. Do you want to touch on any of those, or did we kind of hit all the bullet points on that?
I feel like we touched on those. Definitely go click on those. They're up on Heroes Hearth right now. Give me views, because views sustain my life. But I try to highlight different teams each week and try not to repeat teams, but in EU I just didn't even try. Like it's all about the method matches, nothing else like there's a couple of interesting storylines in Europe, but they're all completely dwarfed by those method matches. And then in NA there's a couple of things that are interesting. I stand by the fact that I really do think Heroes Hearth vs Space Station is going to be a match that a lot of people sleep on, that one is really interesting. We didn't even talk about the fact, like, this is the Asmodan team versus the Lost Vikings team. Like, we're going to see some stuff in that match.
I hope we do. That'd be exciting.
So I'm very excited about it. And we've got, obviously, Tempo versus Team 12, and then Freedom versus Tempo in the fight for second. Which is going to be really
Schizo
cool.
was trying to do some rough arithmetic there in Twitch chat. I think it's just, you have to add up the matches and just multiply it by 2. That's the maximum amount of points you can get. I don't know how many matches there were off the top of my head, though. In the amateur scene, North America Open Division starts January 29th, but so does EU. So things change this year. Again, it's going to be bi-weekly, which means every other week. But instead of EU 1 week and NA the other week, they're both going to run concurrently on the same day. Concurrently is the wrong word, because they're not going to run at the same time. They're going to run on the same day, though. EU will run at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Registration is open until 5 p.m. The tournament starts at 6 p.m. That's CET, which is Central European Time or something like that. I don't know. I'm an ignorant American. And then North America Open Division, registration's open until 5 p.m. Pacific time, and the tournament starts at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and both of those are on January 29th, which is this week coming up. They are going to happen. It's going to finish up the next time we record, actually. So, yeah. With that,
have you guys talked about the fact that you're basically not allowed to play Open Division if you're on the East Coast, based on those start times? Like, stuff ends real late.
Yeah, that's I don't know why they do that specifically. It's like if you have a job and you have to get up in the morning, you're literally murdering yourself, and you're playing poorly because you're tired as AF. So
even if you're in college and you've got like an 8 a.m. class, like if you're going far, you're going to be done at like 3 a.m. or later, and you're having to compete at your highest level, like after midnight. It's tough. Respect to any East Coast player that competes in this thing, because your life is going to be real rough. You get some Monster Energy, my guy.
Well, I guess when you're a kid, you can pull it off, right? Like that's who someone was saying. It was McIntyre was saying that when you can't live off Mountain Dew, and I think you were commenting on it too. You can't live off Mountain Dew and Cheetos into your late 20s, unfortunately. Dude,
remember when you could stay up after 11? Like,
unfortunately, Trent, I still have to for work. So, but yes, I know what you're saying. I'm exhausted. It used to be like whatever. Now it's like I want to die. Anyways, with that, guys, that's a show. We're going to start signing off. I'm going to do a little housekeeping here. Thank you all for listening to Trolling HGC. It's a weekly show about Heroes of the Storm Esports. It's a member of the Trolls.gg Entertainment Network. We stream live on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/TrollsGG, every week on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Occasionally, we do have to move the show to Wednesdays, but we try to keep it at Tuesdays at 7:30. And with that, Trent, do you have any shout-outs? Where can people find you? Let us know, man.
All of my Heroes stuff is on Heroes Hearth now. They've got an awesome blog platform and are super supportive of us staff writers. So definitely go check out Heroes Hearth, read all the blogs that are up there. Not just my stuff. There's some amazing writers doing awesome content there. For my stuff, you can follow me at Trent_esports. Most likely this weekend, you will get an infinite amount of Dragon Ball FighterZ gifts retweeted at you since the game comes out. And then I'll probably also watch some Heroes. But yeah, check me out on Twitter. A new episode of Entry Level Esports comes out tomorrow. It's going to be a really good one that'll make a couple of people angry. So I'm excited about that.
That show has been a booming success. Thanks for doing that with us, man.
Dude, it's a lot of fun, and thanks to all the people that are asking questions and commenting, it makes it a lot of fun to do.
Guys, you can follow me on Twitter at BahgzHGC. You can watch me stream on twitch.tv/Bahgz, where I've been doing that a lot more regularly. I've got a schedule. I've been sticking to it. People come and watch. It's amazing. I got that affiliate status. I just need to I haven't popped my subscriber cherry yet. That's probably vulgar for this show, but whatever. As well, guys, if you enjoyed tonight's show and are interested in Blizzard's other esports offerings, consider subscribing to the Weekly Blizz. My buddy Gwaz and I, we're old high school buddies. We talk about all of Blizzard esports. We talk about Overwatch, Hearthstone, WoW Arena. We talk about the Mythic Dungeon Invitational. We even discussed the Raiding World First because it's PvE, but whatever, it's still esports, baby. That's weekly. It's we stream that on twitch.tv/PowerUpNetwork. Go check it out. Follow me on Twitter so you can keep up to date with that. As well, guys, if LiQuid wasn't here tonight, but I'm gonna do his shout out for him. The best place to follow him is at LiQuid. That's LiQiuDGG. So it's spelt a little funny. He tweets whenever he's about to do anything interesting. He also streams at twitch.tv/LiQuidGG. To all our patron supporters, thank you. It's because of you we're able to do this and continue to do this. You cover our hosting fees. For those of you considering donating, I highly recommend it. It's going to help us be able to produce more content, which we would love to do. We've got big plans. I'll be slowly unfurling those as the time rolls on. If you're interested in following the show on Twitter, it's at Trolling HGC to keep up with show announcements and Hero of the Storm's esports news. Again, you can subscribe on twitch.tv/TrollsGG to support us. We're on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, anywheres you can digest the audio only or vodcasts. We're there, guys. As well, be sure to visit trolls.gg to read our articles that are written by our fantastic writers and keep up with the podcast. And if you need to get in touch with us, the DMs are open on Twitter, or you can email us at trolling@trolls.gg. And with that, like my friend Tower Baron says all the time, see you in the Nexus, or whatever he says. I don't remember. Peace out. Goodbye. Stop streaming.